Thoughts turn into desires. Desires turn into actions. What does it mean to you? Guard your heart. Amen. What you put in it, what you speak to it. Think about how it affects your spiritual life. Because this is a principle of God that's been around for thousands of years. Deuteronomy 4:9. Only take heed to yourself and diligently keep yourself, lest you forget the things your eyes have seen, lest they depart from your heart all the days of your life, and teach them to your children and your grandchildren. I've seen many Christian people that fall into destruction and they forget the times that God saved them, that God set them free, that God healed them, that God provided for them, that God did things in their lives. They didn't guard their heart, they forgot, and they departed from the things of God. This takes practice and focus. Do you realize that you choose what you dwell on? No one chooses what you dwell on. Sometimes you're anything like me. Sometimes you'll get a thought in there that goes, phew, and you're like, oh my gosh, where did that thing come from? None of you? Come on, man. You guys are like gumdrops and lollipops. That's all I think about every day. I'll be just like driving along and this thought will go in my head and I'm like, what? Where did that come from? Can I get a witness? And in that moment, you have a choice. Wow. Let's stoke these fires and stand by and get warm by them. It's a good thought. And you just drifting away, driving away. Instead of, in that moment, saying, you know what? That thought's not of God. I'm not going to speak that. I'm not going to think that. I'm not going to dwell on that. I'm going to choose to think about it. I don't know, kittens and fluffy clouds or something. You know what I mean? The Bible makes it very clear in Philippians 4:8, finally, brethren, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there's any virtue, if there's anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things. That's what it says, meditate on these things. I heard another story of a guy that the Spirit of the Lord had told him to sell something and give the money for the spread of the gospel. Now, I don't know if you guys ever had that experience where God will tell you to sell something and give the money for the spread of the gospel, or God will tell you to give some money to somebody. Have you guys ever had this experience before? Nobody. Okay, we'll get into prayer. God will tell you. Because I've had the experience many times where money will come into my hand and then the Lord will say, hey, give this money away. And I usually kind of talk it away and be like, there's no way it's God. And so then God wakes Crystal up in the middle of the night and is just like, hey, I think we should give this away. And I'm like, I don't know. Anybody else? God will give me a number. Give this person this amount of money. And then whatever that number is, I half it in my brain. And then I'm like, that's got to be the number. And then the Holy Spirit speaks to my wife and is like, hey, do you think God's asking us to do this? And then I'm like, deer in headlights, like, what do you mean? And then she's like, I think we're supposed to give X. And I'm like, what do you mean? You know? Because the Holy Spirit's right on time. So anyway, this guy, he had a piece of land. And the Lord told him to sell it and, give the money for the furtherance of the gospel. And what happened was the piece of land sold for more than he thought it was going to sell. In his mind, he thought like, okay, it's going to sell for this. I'm going to give God X. But then he sold the land and it actually sold for more than he expected to. So he did what most people do. They're like, well, I'm going to hold that back for me because, it was my land in the first place. And then, give God the part that I thought it was going to be in the first place. What happened to that guy was interesting. He died. He died right after the land deal closed. And Peter actually called this guy out in Acts chapter 5 and told him that this thing that happened where he lied to God happened in his heart. In Acts chapter 5 verse 4 it says, while it remained, was it not your own? And after it was sold, was it not in your own control? Why have you conceived this thing in your heart? You've not lied to men, but to God. Folks, don't underestimate your heart. What you will think about will manifest in your life. It will. Jesus knew it. Matthew 9:4. But Jesus, knowing their thoughts, said, why do you think evil in your hearts? Marcus Ford preached a fantastic message on Wednesday night. Collier's like, amen! Biggest clap I've got all morning for her husband. For her husband. And it was funny because Marcus talked about on Wednesday that Jesus would preach and change his message based on the thoughts of the people that were listening. It would change the way you listen to sermons.